Hi, I'm Peter Reynolds, and welcome to Pros and Conversations, a podcast that not only speaks to inspiring people from the world of science, business, and the arts, but provides real tips to help aspiring entrepreneurs reach their goals. Today, I'm joined by Damon Adachi, and he is a marketing consultant with Sevenfold Marketing. How's it going, Damon?
Great. Thanks for having me back. I hope I can contribute something to this topic. I'm not quite an expert, but very interested in where it's going.
Well, in all our conversations, about entrepreneurship, and starting a small business, we've sort of touched on this idea of the unique challenges, faced by women entrepreneurs, but in particular, mothers who want to become entrepreneurs, or mothers with careers and looking for ways to balance that.
Right. And I have 4 children, so that gives me some cred in the mothership category, I think.
Well, the great thing is that, we both are married, we both have kids, but we're definitely not experts in this area. And that's why it's really great to bring on our guest, Kinia Romanowska. And she is the CEO of Pros and Babes and the founder of the MoMBA program. Kinia, welcome to Pros and Conversations.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
So let's just jump right into it and tell me, what is Pros and Babes?
We're an organization where we help careers and families grow. So when I went on my first maternity leave, I was told I would miss the intellectual conversations. And little did I know that this little sentence would change my entire life when I started bringing together mothers with demanding careers to learn, grow, and connect. And that was about 4.5 years ago. It was a mom's group, and now it turned into my full-time career with staff. And we run a program that is very attractive to career-minded moms, particularly in STEM fields, but not only. Because, Peter, as you may know, 43% of women leave full-time STEM employment after having kids, and it's 23% for men. So we notice that the work we do really helps women to redefine their identity after having kids, redefine their values and priorities, or take awareness of them, become more aware of them, and so that they can function better in family and career. And we see women, getting results like a 40% promotion and going down to a 4-day work week while being a very valued member of their organizations. We see women getting promotions during and after maternity leave. We see marriages strengthened. We see wealth plans defined and families' net worths growing when they do this critical work that we do as a community through a curriculum, through networking, through learning together, and through changing our mindsets.
It's fascinating, that there were no resources like this available before you started it. And I'm wondering if you could take us back a little bit to what you were doing beforehand, and what sort of made you decide to kind of take that leap, to becoming a full-time entrepreneur.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So my career has been in the information industry. It has spanned investigative journalism. So when I lived in Montreal, when I was based there, I did investigative follow the dollar stories, like in the construction industry, for example, but also international journalism. So I traveled, to Zambia, Guatemala, the former Yugoslavia. I was really fascinated by countries that were hit by adversity and also telling the stories of local people and Canadians. So when I moved to Alberta to join my husband, I pivoted into corporate communications, using a lot of the skills that I had from journalism. And it's really motherhood that triggered that pathway towards entrepreneurship. I had always had that entrepreneurial spirit. Even as a journalist, I founded an international online magazine that lived on after I pivoted to other projects. But Pros and Babes really, in a way, took a life of its own. When I started it, I didn't know that we were going to really fill a gap. And I started getting calls from all over Canada, asking, when are you coming to my city? I really need something like that. Or older women, 30 years my senior, said, where were you when I was having kids? I so wish something like that was there. So It's, entrepreneurship, it's kind of, I think it's a calling. And for me, it did take a life of its own. I remember that specific moment. It's so vivid in my mind in our townhouse with my really young son. I was there on our bed, the curtains were drawn. I was probably nursing him to sleep. And I told my husband, I would like this to be a business one day, like really not just a hobby. And so one thing led to another, working during lunches and evenings and hiring my first contractors, then doing a crowdfunding campaign. And then when COVID hit, we moved our programming from in-person to online with a scalable business model. And, before I knew it, revenue was growing. I was hiring more people. Now I'm at that kind of messy, I would say, scaling phase where really hiring professionals to support me, letting people take over chunks of the business. So I think when I look back on the whole journey, it's a calling. There were a lot of inevitabilities. I set something in motion and then, it just grew bigger and bigger. And obviously I'm driving it, but it's like it's a force greater than I am. I don't think I have other words to describe it.
There's a real momentum, when you're starting your own business. And I love when you said calling, and Damon and I have talked about this, before, often we're drawn to the idea of taking control of our lives, starting our own business, becoming an entrepreneur, because maybe we're a little tired, of the, of sort of the day to day, we're putting in 50 hours, 60 hours. But what we do is we give up that 50 or 60 hours that we're putting into a corporate job to put 100 hours into our actual passion.
Yeah, what's even more interesting to me, sorry, Peter, is that, you talk about that calling and you feel that, you want to create, but weave in that element of becoming a parent. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Your business is your baby as well. And personally, I was on paternity leave when I started my business. I had the opportunity to step back from work, from the corporate life, and be at home with my newborn son. But I also had the opportunity to start thinking more creatively in that process, which spawned my business. So it's interesting that there are actual parallels between parenthood and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I know you talk, Kinia, about this idea of you have to get on the same page with your partner.
Yeah.
How much of that is a challenge, for women who want to, find that balance, between their career and motherhood?
That's a really interesting question. So I would say overall, it is a challenge for women. For some people, it's a little bit easier. For others, it's harder. The starting point for the discussion in our community is values. So our community members, they begin their journey. We do a values board and a 25-year vision board. And we encourage our clients to do that with their partners. And so it will probably come as no surprise to you that for those whose values are more closely aligned, there's less conflict. For those who see a more significant divergence in their core values, then they have to embark on the journey a little bit more strategically. So we're huge fans of therapy. A lot of people in our circles who have demanding careers, couples therapy is recognized as very beneficial. And one of the reasons this is such a big challenge for couples is that traditionally women take on the bulk of caregiving duties. Now, in our circles, we see very, very present fathers. In my own relationship, my husband plays an enormous role in the care of our children. In fact, a lead role in many aspects. But in many family constellations, the mother takes on literally a second full-time job. The mental load of caring for children, not just the diapers and the food, but thinking of all, the emotional and mental and domestic load, like the project management that underpins the family economy, typically is absorbed by the mother, right? Because of traditional gender roles. We haven't really evolved our mindset as a society, like naturally and organically. And I'm not saying it's all men's fault, because women tend to engage in something called maternal gatekeeping, where actually they might not let the partners, right? They will act as gatekeepers of how things are done. And so many women have to take a step back and realize, okay, I want my partner to be a more quote unquote equal participant, but they have to create the space for that to happen. They have to understand that there's not just one way to parent, right? And so that's a huge step. That's a challenge in itself. So circling back, values, defining a common family vision. Why are you doing this? Why are you now, you were told you could have it all as a career woman. You realize that, the instruction manual didn't come with that. So why are you doing this? Why are you and your partner going to pursue this journey of maybe dual career households while juggling having children in a pandemic. The couples who have more clarity around their values and their vision are better equipped to navigate the day-to-day ups and downs versus, getting stressed and like super anxious every time an obstacle comes, because inevitably every single day you're like solving crises, right, with children during a pandemic and careers. So that is it is a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable challenge.
Yeah, I would think that, that partnership is just going to be, two heads are better than one when it comes to solving these problems. And if you don't have your partner on board, it becomes almost impossible if you're not on the same page. And I know when you talk about those gender roles, I mean, I don't know if you experience this, Damon, but I know, my mom would refer to if my wife was going out that I was babysitting, and I would say, I'm not actually babysitting. I'm the father. And but there's just that idea of, when the dad is hanging out, he's a very present dad, he's an engaged dad. When the mom is doing something with the child, she's just being a mom. Absolutely, that double standard exists. I was going to ask you about, the particular challenges for women in STEM fields, because, these are individuals who are incredibly driven, and have spent, their entire lives getting to this point in their career. Yeah. And then, they want to have a family, but this idea of even thinking about that, is there any sort of guilt or shame, associated with wanting to continue their career because somehow that makes them, less of a parent? Do those feelings of guilt and shame exist, with new moms?
Well, guilt and shame are two different things, although we tend to talk about them together, right? So shame is often the feeling of I am not enough, and what I do is never enough. Guilt is, to me, it's a signal that there's something off regarding your values. So when we have strong emotions, right, and we're doing something and we feel guilty, is because there's some misalignment with what we value with our family values. So yes, I see those. Those are not themes that we dwell on. I think we acknowledge, and then we look, okay, well, what are you building? Why is it important for you to be a working mom? Why are you working? What are you teaching your children through that? And I think when people have a clarity of the why and the values, then the guilt doesn't become so debilitating, right? And so if you're doing something by choice, and even if you engage your kids in the decision-making process, then that can definitely help. One of the biggest challenges I've heard with mothers going on maternity leave in STEM fields is, as they announce their pregnancies, they feel shut out. And so it could be there could be safety reasons for some women. Due to the pregnancies, regulation may not allow them to be in risky situations. But I've heard that theme over and over again, that all of a sudden, in terms of engineers, they're not engineers, they're female engineers. They're engineers who are going to have babies. And so they've worked so hard to maybe be the first woman in the room. And then when the pregnancy is announced or disclosed, then all of a sudden, they start being pulled out from projects, and that's not everywhere. There's some women who have amazing maternity leave experiences. I have a few clients who work at large energy companies, and they say, my managers were very supportive. I was very encouraged. But I've heard that also, feeling shut out, right? There's also, I just mentioned this, often being the only woman in the room. So if you work, 60, 80-hour shifts, or you have a fly in, fly out partner, or you are fly in, fly out, then that puts stress. It's physically stressful, right? And so managing that with a pregnancy and being afraid to disclose it. In many cases, for their first pregnancy, women have been anxious. With the second leave, maybe they're with us or they worked with us, they're much more strategic, and they kind of decide, when should I disclose? Why? How do I want to communicate that in a way that's favorable for my career? But for many, it's just that whole idea of disclosing they are going to go on leave, and then, they know, am I going to be seen as less valuable, is an additional layer of juggling, right? The fatigue, the nausea, the fact that you're going to give birth, it's huge, and it can feel very, very lonely to navigate that, right? If you're a pioneer.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Pros and Conversations is brought to you by For the Record Productions, providing video production services to corporate and nonprofit clients for over 20 years. To learn more about how we can help your business, visit videosthatmatter.ca. And by the Business Alliance, a professional peer group that helps you grow your business through networking, collaboration, and sound advice. To learn more about how to become a member, visit jointhealliance.biz.
Interesting. When my wife went on her maternity leave with her first child, she actually only took 4 months, and her office was very concerned. They were like, "Are you sure?" But she was in events, and those deadlines are non-negotiable, right? Those event dates can't be moved. She was right there and was with child, sometimes on show floor with the baby, and they gave her a closet to feed the child in, and it was very accommodating. And to your point earlier, Peter, the greatest judgment that we had to deal with was from our parents. And, she knew that as her partner, I was fully supportive to be the primary parent for a period of time. And that was a term that we hand back and forth now. But it's the traditional viewpoints that you're actually fighting against more than your partnership as a couple.
It seems incredibly overwhelming. I mean, with what that you're saying, all the things that expectant moms have to deal with in their careers, and then when they give birth, the things they have to deal with. And this brings us to you creating the MoMBA program, and which is a great title, by the way.
Thank you.
Tell me about what is MoMBA.
Well, as you can probably hear from the term, there's mom and there's MBA. And so we did the term portmanteau, right? When you put two words together. So we apply some business strategy elements to motherhood, and we encourage women and we teach women to be the CEOs of their lives. We, from a young age, when you're career driven, we're encouraged to be strategic. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? How much money do you want to make? All of that. But are we strategic about our family choices? The impact and the legacy we want to leave behind. So that's what the MoMBA is about. It's about getting very clear on what you want for your mindset, right? Just like we eat food, we can choose what we put in our brains. And when you become a mom, you go through the process of matrescence, acknowledging the changes, embracing the values change, embracing your role as a mother and professional is so empowering. It puts you back in the driver's seat, right? It's so easy. And I've been there, and still I see some patterns coming back now as I'm scaling my business, getting in victim mode, right? But I'm a mom. I thought everybody was going to support me. And we have diversity and inclusion policies. Why isn't anybody holding my hand, right? That was me. That was me. And I was angry and upset, and it felt like a victim. And so when you're suffering, like as moms, we're sleep deprived, our hormones have changed. There's so many circles where you can indulge that, life sucks. I'm so tired. This is so hard. What we do in the MoMBA is we flip it into an opportunity. Okay, it's hard. You've changed. What do you want to believe? Which values are you going to live by? How do you structure your relationship with your partner so that you're on the same team and build the legacy together? What kind of support systems do you need to put in place if you want to succeed? Because if you try to do everything on your own, you're on the fast track to burnout. So outsource if you want to protect your sanity and your career. What does health look like for you? What do you need to do to stay healthy mentally and physically? We work a lot on our nervous systems and the community together. Anxiety is high, depression rates are high in our demographic. So how do we support each other? What do you do for your finances? We work with mothers who, say, I want my net worth to be $1 million. I'm like, no, move that set point. And a month later, I'm on track to build a $6 million net worth plan, right? How do you define career life integration? I use balance in my, let's say, PR, because that's what people Google. But, work-life balance can be a deceiving term. So we choose the word that matters for you. Harmony, integration, balancing, flow. If you choose a word that aligns with what you want, you can start, aligning your calendar. So take back control of your calendar. So we work a lot on time blocking, getting, telling your calendar what to do, not just saying yes to everything that people ask you to. You don't have to be everything to everyone, right? So I think I mentioned about 6 of the 12 modules that we cover. We take a holistic approach. We also have 2 whole modules on leadership and career skills. So that's what the MoMBA is about, is getting out of that, victim space to I'm back in the driver's seat. I'm surrounding myself with people who get me, and I'm building the business strategy for my life so that in 25 years, we can sit on a beach being healthy, looking back on our family life together and not regret what we did. Not regret that sometimes I worked 80-hour work weeks and I was away from my kids, and boy, that hurt. But I was intentional. And so maybe another time we build beautiful memories together. And on the daily, I told my kids I loved them. I hugged them. I did tapping with them for, stress release, emotional release. And I did my best, and we knew what best looked like. And we tried every day. And we showed our kids that, yes, this is tough. Yes, the world is not perfect for working moms, but we're doing this with intentionality and no regrets, right? So that's what the MoMBA is about.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. Damon, your thoughts?
Well, yeah. So the one thing that really stuck with me, and in terms of legacy, is that we've said in our personal lives, there's no license for having kids, and it shows sometimes, right? People don't have intention in raising families. They fall into it and they fall backwards into it. The fact that you've added such levels of structure and organization and intention and planning and strategy to family building, as well as career building, is excellent. And I think that, beyond just what effect you're having today, in 10 years' time, when you see the sort of children that get raised in these environments that understand intention, that understand productivity and understand planning and family values. I mean, for me, my number one job is not a marketing consultant. My number one job is a parent. And that's the one I'm most proud of. So when you get to integrate both of those things at the same time, it's very inspiring, very inspiring. I'm very impressed. Love it.
I thank you for saying that. And, when you talked about structure, that's, I think, why we attracted so many engineers. They're very process driven. They're like, a manual for working motherhood? SOPs for working motherhood? Woohoo! So, I didn't necessarily intend to work with so many STEM women, but because of the structure, I think they found that very attractive. And I like to joke, my clients are so much smarter than me. I say, I'm going to hire you to raise my kids. I'm going to hire you to coach me, because you're just taking what I developed with my skill set and you're taking it to the next level. The level of consistency and implementation of my clients, my mind is blown, it's just gorgeous. These women, their brains are so beautiful, right? And they take this structure and what I see happening with their children and the successes they have and the emotional connection, because this month we're talking about parenting, right? So I have this paper right here. It's kind of like one of our worksheets, but what does success look like a parent, right? And so you can circle back to that. And it's funny how much we have in common in terms of wanting to be guides, to love deeply, to nurture, right? And just having a compass like that, a North Star on those tough days where you're this close to losing your temper, or you've lost it, and you're not proud. You go back to this and you can say, okay, well, what did I define as success? How do I reconnect with my child? How do I show myself love and grace? Because this is hard, but it's a teaching opportunity to show my children that I love them and we love each other, even in the anger, even in the outbursts, even when our behaviors were ugly, right?
No, structure is very important, because I definitely, as a parent, I know I'm making it up as I go along. I bought all the what to expect when expecting books, and I can admit now that I did not read it all the way through. So
you're catching up on sleep before you're gonna lose it.
Exactly. So I love the idea of having that structure, being able to go back, and look at, because you talked about values, and how that was really a key, sort of, what are what are our values as a family? What do we value? And having that as the jumping off point, for all these decisions that we're making. I know previously when we were talking, this idea of outsourcing, and I think that's very interesting how, particularly with individuals who are used to doing it all, used to taking care of everything themselves, and how challenging that must be to say, you don't have to do everything yourself. There are some things you can outsource. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe the things that you shouldn't be outsourcing as a parent?
Yes. Okay. Let me start with the second one. All right. Is that's you shouldn't outsource your values. You shouldn't. You should consciously choose them because they're the the foundational fabric out of which everything grows. It's kind of the soil of the garden of your company. So, people are influencing you every single day. And why don't you choose to be the main influencer? I'm quoting somebody I interviewed yesterday. She used that term. We're surrounded by influencers everywhere, but you have the choice to be the biggest influencer in your child's life. So I would say never outsource those values. And when we start that conversation with clients, and I love this one story particularly, I share it all the time. One client said that her first core value was performance. And I was like, this is really interesting. This is the first time somebody says that, because often family happiness or inner harmony or health become a top core value for people when they become parents, right? They might have been super ambitious, but like there's a shift. And so I said, let's explore that. And she reflected on it and said, this is a value that actually came from my parents. And I realized it's not my top value. It was very valued when I was growing up, and her whole sense of identity was intertwined with performance. And it was such a monumental shift. It's like turning the Titanic. It's like you're going to a different lane, a different vehicle of how you're going to live your life, right? So it's so important to take stock of how you grew up, which values your parents instilled in you, choosing which traditions you're going to stick with consciously, and then realizing, well, I live in a different day and age with different challenges. Maybe that value, maybe that tradition is not something we can honor in a way that's healthy for us. So that's never outsource your values, or if you do so consciously, because if you think about religion, faith, right, these are century-long traditions. I think it's very important to choose that if you're going to outsource part of them and align with a greater institution, you're doing so consciously. But when it comes to outsourcing physical things like cleaning, meal prep, yard work, even decluttering of the home. Here we have a company that does concierging, and so they can come and organize parties for you, all of that. Handymen, handy women, do it. So many women who, thought, I don't have the budget, I don't have the cash flow, maternity leave is, it's expensive. It's temporary. If you're going to invest in your sanity and your mental health and your future earning potential, maximize what really matters. Being good at your job, being good in your family and your couple, that's what matters in those first years. You have the potential. You're so smart. You're going to make millions in your lifetime. So, that's when I hear my clients, it was the theme of this year, right? And there are also virtual assistants for those who don't have family close by, or because of COVID, sometimes you don't want to outsource as many physical things. There are like virtual assistants who can take off the mental load for you, right? In organizing things. So by far this year, that was the theme. I picture my clients in my mind who are thinking, no, we can't afford it. No, my husband will say no. And then they come back and they say, I should have done this a year ago. We fight less. We spend more time with our kids. We're more intentional. I have more energy. I'm more productive at work. Yet so many professionals get bottlenecked and think, only I can do this. Well, you do it. And then next thing we know, I've seen it. I've seen people who did not choose to go with us burn out, quitting their jobs, emotional crumble. I'm not saying you can't do well without us, but I clearly see a significant difference with people who get help from therapists, from experts, from, just reduce the decision load. It transforms lives. So I think I made it pretty clear of where I stand on the topic.
I love that line, maximize what really matters. I think that is a lesson that we can all appreciate, right, Damon?
Yeah, that's something that we definitely mention to starting entrepreneurs without even considering the family burden and the household weight of what you're doing there. But we tell young entrepreneurs, focus on where you need the most return, on where you have the most to bring to the table, and outsource things that you are not the expert in or don't have, resources to invest in. And even though it's hard to let go of the wheel sometimes, that's your best play for success. And it's much easier to say that in talking about things like shipping and accounting and marketing. It's much harder to say that about meal prep and bedtime and house cleaning, but it's the same concept and it makes perfect sense.
So Kinia, to finish off, if maybe you could talk to listeners out there, maybe there's someone who is in the STEM field, very career minded, and, they are looking to start a family. What's that sort of first thing that they should start to think about, when it comes to finding that harmony?
So being intentional from the get-go and seeking mentorship early on. There are women who join, and men and dads, more and more dads, who join our workshops when they're students, and they join in the first 10 minutes, say, maybe this is too early for me. I say, absolutely not. If you think you want a family, start making projections as soon as possible, whether it's Gantt charts, cash flow charts. And what I like to do is, have different categories of life, right? Like we do these 25-year career plans with our clients that look at how old are your kids going to be, how old your parents are going to be at different stages, right? So start asking yourself the question. I'm going to try to, I can complicate things a little bit early on in the process, but I want to say, prepare that there's going to be a huge change, right? Parenthood is going to affect your values and priorities. Think from the start how you want to talk about parenthood. If it's really important to you, don't hide it. Start talking about it with mentors and safe circles early on. And so that when you are pregnant, you know when and how to announce it. You know what your cash flow plan can look like. You've talked to a financial advisor about building wealth. That is a huge key part of our component, because Peter, you heard me talking about the $1 million wealth gap that hits women. I'm sure that in STEM, it's like the $5 million wealth gap, because the more money you make, the higher earning potential, the higher the wage discrepancy. So to circle back, no, parenthood is going to change you. Start examining your values early on. We did a values board with my husband before we had kids, right? Start having a picture of your legacy early on. In 25 years, what would you like your kids to say about you, right? Start getting financial advice early on. Work on your self-leadership so that you can lead yourself with integrity and values, and not have to ask an expert, should I talk about my baby or not? You should know that from the heart based on your values, right? I would like you to feel empowered to be a leader in what matters to you, so that you end up being with employers or organizations who align with you, and you're not hiding a huge part of your identity, right? So I hope that summarizes it, like values, vision, intentionality, financial planning as early as you can, surrounding yourself with parent mentors, I think will set you up for much greater success than waiting until like you're 6 months pregnant and thinking, what's next for me, right? Think early in the process.
And maximize what really matters.
Yeah.
Kinia, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, and I definitely have learned a lot, and I think that hopefully this will inspire listeners out there to really kind of look at assess their values and assess when it comes to parenthood and career, and looking at the best ways to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so glad you're raising awareness on a topic that is still not talked about very much. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
And how can women find you? Where can they find you?
Great question. So prosandbabes.com. I think I'll spell it out. Siri sometimes hears frozen babes. So professionals and babies, right? prosandbabes.com. And that's where lots of our resources, including our networking group, is available.
And thank you to our monarch of marketing, Damon Adachi, for joining us again today. Thanks, Damon. You have been listening to Pros and Conversations. I'm your host, Peter Reynolds, and we've been speaking with Kinia Romanowska, who is the CEO of Pros and Babes and the founder of the MoMBA program.
Thank you.